If you love our civil experiment, namely the United States of America, please stand. I want you to picture in your mind's eye our flag and what it stands for. How many of you guys enjoy the freedom that we have, right?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's beautiful.
I love this group. I had the opportunity to come a few months ago and speak for a little bit, and this is one of the most unique groups I've ever seen, just in what we talk about here and how we talk about things, and it's a testament to what you're trying to do, Michael. I think it's great. So my name's Kevin Brown. I'm running for County Commission District 2 here, and for the last 10 plus years, I have served this community in the Republican Party as the former treasurer, state committee man, and chairman of the party here, as well as serving in the legislature, working on Escambia County issues, both for the House and the Senate and for our former Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of very important things that have really given a lot of purpose. But it's really shown me that more than anything, I've learned how to be a problem solver. I've spent the last decade plus helping people solve problems I have no idea what the solutions are when we first start talking about them. Problems that I've never even heard of most of the time before we start talking about them. But being able to understand how to work with other people and put the right people together to find the answers to those types of problems. And it's always a process, and learning how to understand that process and how it works is a very special thing. The oil spill in particular, I've been able to work on that from the time of the explosion all the way up to now. I helped write some of the law we have on the books, and I've also had the opportunity to see firsthand what it's meant to this community. From the initial explosion and the aftermath, that first summer, we had so many people out of work. We had so many people who didn't know where their next paycheck was going to come from. And how do they deal with this massive bureaucracy and trying to figure out how to get back on their feet and made whole. It became a personal issue for me, having to see all of these people. I remember the first time I ever did anything in the legislature, it was a public meeting at Oriole Beach Middle School over in Gulf Breeze about the oil spill. And we were going to have people there that were having problems with their claims. We had the cafeteria opened up. Anybody that wanted to be there could show up. When we got there, it was already overflowed out the doors of the cafeteria. There were so many people there that were having problems. And that was when it first hit me how important some of these roles are, and the fact that we have the ability to help people. And are we really doing it? Are we really serving that purpose? So I've taken those experiences like helping on veterans-related issues, helping make Florida the most veteran and military-friendly state in the country, helping the spouses of military members who are transferred here and serving here have their credentials fast-tracked and without any additional fees so they can get on their feet and begin their lives here. Transportation issues and issues helping people find relief during the pandemic. And anytime anyone's had any kind of issue in dealing with their state government, how do you help that person, be that advocate for them and helping them get an answer and a solution out of this massive bureaucracy? And that's how I see this role as county commissioner. You know, it's technically someone that sets the policy and the budget for the county, but in my view, it needs to be an advocate for the people here. It needs to be somebody that they can call when they know they've had an issue with the county, whatever it is. They know they can call their commissioner, and their commissioner is going to work to get them an answer. Now, it may not be the answer they want sometimes, but they're going to know that their commissioner is going to work to get them an answer. And that's what I believe in my heart of hearts is the essence of service in this, is being able, no matter who you are, being able to understand that your representative is serving you and works for you. And sometimes I'm afraid we don't have that benefit when it comes to some of our leadership. A little bit about me. I've got a 6-year-old little girl. She helped me pick out those cookies back there. If y'all have the cookies, those are her favorite. So please have those. And frankly, I didn't really know what to come here and talk about tonight, but the cookies kind of made me spark an idea, I guess. And that is, we hear a lot of cookie cutter answers from every politician we see every 2 years, from I support the military to I believe the children are the future to whatever, you know. And tonight, and I think this group is special in the fact I don't want to talk cookie cutter answers tonight. Let's talk about, what do you see after you give those answers? How do you actually make those things happen? Because anybody can tell you a good idea, but being able to actually make that idea come reality is something that's much more difficult and requires a lot more buy-in from people and being able to work with people. Transportation and public safety are my #1 issues. Infrastructure, this road out here, Stuck in the Middle with You is, I think, a pretty good song to lead off with, because that's kind of where we are, stuck in the middle between Pensacola and Perdido out here. And this road is getting worse every day. It's the priority as far as public safety in this district goes for me. And we're going to make it the priority. I've already talked to Commissioner Bergosh about how we're going to do that, about how we're going to speak with one voice finally. If you were to ask FDOT right now why nothing's been done for years on Gulf Beach and Sorrento, they're going to tell you that it's because Escambia County can't get together and speak with one voice when it comes to what their priorities are. They get bowled over in the TPO meetings because of that. If you were to look at the TPO priority list, Gulf Beach, Sorrento is not even the top 15 items on that list. I have a hard time thinking of 15 things that are more important public safety-wise than Gulf Beach and Sorrento. So we're going to preach that message, and that's something that we're going to take care of as soon as possible. I'd love to hear from you guys. I can tell you, I have had a pretty interesting journey as far as this campaign goes. I've never done this before. I've been involved in government and politics for a long time, but I've never been the guy up front. I've always been the guy sort of, whispering in somebody's ear, or the random people in the background. But I've never actually been willing to do something like this until now. And frankly, it's a purpose-driven thing. I feel at the end of the day, we've got so much opportunity when it comes to this area in particular, but we have squandered it for years now. From meeting with people in the last 10 years about what the issues are in this county, they haven't changed. It's because we just keep kicking the can down the road. And if we continue to do it, we're going to get the same result, and we're going to lose the opportunity that we have right now with some of these funds that are available. And we're still going to have to pay this debt like flooding, that I know Chris is one of the most passionate people I've ever met about, and does a fantastic job advocating. But again, we can solve these problems. We just have to be able to work together and speak with one voice and see the bigger picture, know how to put the different players together, the different funds together to get these things done. They're big problems. They require big solutions. And that's why I'm doing this. That's what I feel my purpose is in this. And I'd love to hear from you guys. So.
One thing, it just kind of dawned on me the last couple of weeks. I attended the Bio Davenport and the WRC meetings last month, or this month. And at first I was kind of upset about the fact that they took away Perdido from District 2. And my own idea was, they've left us with, Beach Haven, Myrtle Grove, down, a lot of places that are Edgewater, a lot of places that are already on CRA lists and need to be built up. And they've taken away our cash cow, but really it's not our cash cow. It's part of the county, and it just made me start thinking that really now I'm kind of glad it happened, because whoever our new D2 commissioner is, I think you're a good possibility, is, doesn't have to be conflicted by, the edge of downtown and Perdido, where to spend your time and money, because Perdido isn't part of your responsibility anymore, other than to cooperate, with the county on that. So, that changed my perspective, to where, okay, so now we should get more focus because we're a bigger percentage of the D2 pie, so to speak.
Absolutely. And people may realize this. From the way it seems, it looks like D2 is supposed to be the next in line for the chairmanship as well. So we will be getting more attention in this area for sure. And again, that's why we need somebody who actually understands what that means and how you can use that and leverage that to get more out of it. Is that the only question? All right, we're going to watch golf. Oh, Keith.
Where you had your thing online a couple of days ago with the two commissioners and the one sit-in, it was brought up about social medias and stuff like that. My main question that I've always felt that we didn't get enough of here in District 2 would be the commissioner talking and holding a monthly meeting or a newsletter or something like that. It's the one thing that Burgash does really well, although I don't believe he actually listens when the people are speaking. Where will you stand on that to where we get a two-way conversation going and we're not on a one-way road of miscommunication?
That is one of the tenets and what I believe this role should be is your commissioner should be out there. I think if you're sitting in your office, not out there finding problems, then by the time the problems get so big that they come to you, you're really not able to do much about them at that point. So I think the commissioners should be out there having quarterly meetings with different neighborhoods, with different associations, talking to our school board members. We need to understand that what our sheriff and our constitutional officers and our school board members' priorities are, those are the priorities of the county here as well. Again, it's about being able to speak with one voice. The school board's been, the district here has been beat up pretty bad lately in our area with Warrington. We've got to understand how we can help the school board advocate to make things better for them. So again, I think it's about being out there. It's about talking to people, not waiting on something to come to you. You got to be out there with them. The coffees with the commissioner, I think, are a great idea. I would replicate that, frankly.
Yeah, he turned the comments off on YouTube.
Would you be putting out a newsletter or something like that on a regular basis?
I would.
Okay.
Yes.
I got a real hard question for you. I watched bits and pieces of your D2 where I've got all the other candidates. And
If you guys would, walk up to the mic if you can. Book 'em a star.
my name's Chris Kerb. I'm with Flood Defenders. I believe I was here with you last time with Michelle Salzman. I hate I missed the last one. I got called away to a neighborhood with flooding problems, and they've been to several board meetings and spoke up, and that's what it's all about. But the question I got for you, and it's a hard one, and you might not know the answer. I know the answer. Escambia County they allocate $4 million a year in local option sales tax for drainage. In 2015, they had a $417 million plan, a list of 228 projects. Well, that's about $650 million now. My question is, how are you going to make flooding a priority if we're only spending $4 million a year? I have the answers, but I just want to see what you have to say.
Okay. Well,
I can help you out with the answers too.
Tell me how I do, then help me out where I mess up here. But I think in making it a priority, we've got to start talking to our neighbors. We've got to look at this thing regionally. We've got to understand, again, this opportunity with the oil spill. There's a lot more money out there than just what we're talking about in Escambia County. Oh, yeah. There's almost $500 million in something called the Restore Act. There's something called the direct component. The county will get about $70 million after that's all said and done, I believe. That's directly to Escambia County. And then there's something called Pot 2. It's the consortium component. And what that is a competitive 5-state grant process between the 5 affected states. Each state has a member who is on the board who awards these projects, and there are also 7 federal members as well. But they spend this money on infrastructure projects throughout the 5 states. Water quality being the biggest factor in that. But we've got to look at this opportunity now and how you can qualify for these funds, how you can leverage these funds. The fact that this county has a very unique situation in that we share a body of water with another state. I've talked to folks in Baldwin County, to legislators and county officials over there, and Mobile County, about the fact that if we look at this thing as a regional issue, and not just Escambia County, not just one neighborhood in Escambia County, but this is a bigger issue here. If we keep looking at it in small terms, we're going to get small solutions for it. So let's talk regionally. Let's look at the different projects that affect this greater watershed that we share with Alabama, and let's try to leverage these funds to fix those issues. So we don't have to go back to the taxpayers and say, hey, we're going to need some more money from you now. We've got this opportunity here. If we understand how to use it and understand how to work together, because we're dealing with 2 states now that sit on this board that determines where the funds go, we're obviously going to have a better chance of getting them. But you've got to understand how to work those things in order to make those happen. Louisiana gets it. They're sucking up a lot of this money. And that's why we're not going to have the opportunity for long. But how did I do? And there are other funds out there available as well.
You hit the nail on the head on a lot of issues. One of the problems, I worked for Escambia County for 25 years, for y'all that don't know. And since 2006, our board's been saying, well, you need to do more with less. Well, more with less. We're now, 422 vacancies countywide. It was 500. And it takes people to go apply for those grants. It also takes money to leverage, because most grants have a leveraging component. You have to match 25, 50, 75%, depending on what the type of grant it is. And the county's got a lot of that restore money and done some good projects. I think West Roberts Regional Pond is one of the 11 ponds in the 11 Mile Creek Basin. But you hit the nail on the head when you said watershed approach. And that's where the state of Florida is actually going, and you'll see legislation in the next couple of years. Matter of fact, DEP and the Water Management District currently have some new state rulemaking, and that's water quality and quantity and quality. I say quality and quantity because the Northwest Florida Management District, the Panhandle, for years, we only had a water quality, and it was DEP. So you meet a first half-inch treatment. I won't go into all the calculations on it, but you're building really small ponds. Then the state got together and they wrote rules, and they said, well, why is the Panhandle not doing the same thing that the rest of the state's doing? Well, the Northwest Florida Water Management District, they have a 0.2 or 0.4 mill rate. South Florida Water Management District, they have a 0.95 mill rate. You know what they're doing there? They have watershed approaches to the entire water management district, because they have a water management district that's funded. And when you do a project, they have it all modeled out. And when you do a project, a subdivision, a development, they plug it into that model and see what it's going to do with the whole watershed. What we're doing in Escambia County is we don't even know how much water's coming in or how much water's going out. It's that simple. If you don't know how much is going in and how much is going out, how are you going to fix problems? You got to look at it from a watershed approach, just like you said.
Let me tell you all this. There is actually right now a pot of money, $175 million pot of money,
Yep.
that the legislature set aside that is statewide. Now, you're not talking about big dollars here in one area, but people have, talk to your legislator, your House member, until July 15th to apply for that kind of funding, and it goes toward infrastructure. Now, again, I'm not saying that we can solve a lot of problems with that, but in order to push things down the road, like Sorrento and Gulf Beach Highway, we ought to be talking to the TPO. I've talked to Austin Mount at the Planning Council already, saying, what do you have right now available in your inventory of projects that could fit a small dollar project that we could get funded right now by this deadline? Things like PD&E studies, things that we just need to get the ball moving down the road a little bit more. So you're exactly right. And it's knowing how to identify those funds that you can take advantage of them. Because if you're not ready, there was a oil spill. It wasn't through Restore. It was through one of the NERDA fundings that went to Apalachicola. About $10 million last fall went to Apalachicola. You know why? Because they were the only place here that had a project ready right then that could use the money. The fact that we don't have shovel-ready projects sitting on the shelf, ready to use whenever things come available, is our fault. We have to fix that, and there's no more excuse for it. I can go past those 10-word answers, those cookie-cutter answers that we talked about earlier. The fact that, yeah, hey, stormwater is important, right? Flooding is important. Well, let me tell you how we can actually fix that. I don't have to tell you it's important. You already know that. You already know it's a problem. Same way with this road out here. Let me tell you how we can get that prioritized and get it fixed. Things that we can do right now by trying to get studies done to get it teed up faster. I think that's the biggest difference in not only understanding the issues, but knowing how to deal with them right away, knowing how to get in there and knowing how to leverage funds like we were talking about, so that we don't have to come back to you guys and ask for more money. There is no reason that the county needs to be getting any more money from its citizens. We have more than enough money. We have more than enough opportunity to get more money. And the fact that we still have these discussions without even mentioning the fact that we need to be looking through the budget to find things we need to get rid of. It's belt tightening time, if anybody hadn't realized that, other than, the rest of us here. But, we've got to make sure that this budget's lean. We can't have waste, especially with the priorities that we've got that need to be funded. And we got to get those priorities funded first. That's why the firefighters have endorsed me and support me, because they know I've got their back when it comes to making them a priority. And sometimes those are hard conversations to have. I mean, sometimes you've got to choose fire trucks over fireworks, because we need the daggone fire trucks. We've got to be able to make those decisions right now.
So, have you got a day job, and if so, what percentage of your time are you going to be spending as our representative versus your whatever other?
Oh, this is. Should I earn this ability to serve District 2? This is my job, 100%. Right now, I'm a business consultant. I've helped folks like the Museum Foundation out on issues as well as broadband issues and things like that. But no, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it. And it is, frankly, this requires full-time attention. Yes, ma'am.
I've been blessed since the first time I came to one of these meetings. I've met so many people. I've met Chris, and I have been going to the board meetings either early in the morning or the late evening. So I've been going to BOCC meetings. So I've got to know the commissioners, and they do listen. They are busy people, but if you go and you present yourself, you have everything organized. The issue was Lumen Mays did say to Burgosh, with Underhill sitting there, you two need to get together, because District 1 and District 2 are going underwater. You two need to get together for that candidate that comes into that seat, Commissioner Underhill. That person needs to be aware that there's people underwater. Totally underwater, which I give kudos to that, because they are listening. If we go, don't complain, just go, listen, go on the agenda. It's public record. Everything I've been doing now is public record. I do emails. But I did get the engineer at my house. He did come from that meeting, along with 2 of his staff members. Because of what Michelle Saltzman said and you said, you have to have a plan and you have to have the budget. Unfortunately, we've been flooding since 2019. They keep passing it. Now I'm told, you're not in the plan, there's no money, and I was just told email, I'm not a priority, and I'm flooding. And I'm the only one flooding. So I'm going to continue to go. If we go and present the situation without attacking, this is my address, this is the situation, this is what I've been doing, the commissioners will listen, but it's in your district. where I sit, where the commissioner has been, Underhill has been to my house. People have been to my house and seen us flood. Only us, just our house. Developer did it, developer's doing it. So with you, when you sit in the seat and the people come to you and say, hey, we're told we don't have any money for you, we're told that you're not a priority, how would you address that? Because for us, we're waiting to see. I said, lift our shed. We got sandbags. They just gave us some sandbags to save our shed. We need a ditch, we need a culvert. Okay, so the engineer sat right, Mr. McCracken came to our house and said, that's not a culvert. That's a 50-year-old ditch that does not function, and you are flooding from that builder across the street because the water is going, it's not going to Jones Creek. The new fellow, Matt Skipper, just said to us, dig a culvert. He told his boss, dig a culvert, they won't flood. I got a new reply. There's no funds. You're not in the plan. So, again, who is going to listen to us in that seat? That's my question.
Well, I would say, number one, if we're serious about making infrastructure and public safety priority, then that funding issue should change already. But additionally, like we've already talked about, there's so many other resources out there available that we need to be going after, not just looking at this one little pot that we have here in this county. But going forward, too, we've got to be able to stay ahead of these problems. We've got to be able to have conversations about stormwater in the zoning meetings and understand what those means, what that means when we're putting new development in. So we're staying ahead of these issues and not reacting to them all the time. It seems like, especially in this part of the county, we react to a lot of issues. We are not being proactive, and we got to start thinking about what we want this area to look like 10 years from now, right now, if we want that to happen. Glenn.
Kevin, I guess concur with what you're saying, although I would add to that sewer issues as well in this part of the county, because that affects the water quality, certainly, because it's basically the technology of the 1940s, you know, all the septic systems. That's a big cost item, but it's out there. But what I wanted to change subjects with you on briefly, at risk of staying here all night, what are your thoughts on the NAS land use study? And the second part of the question is, any thoughts on the economics in the Warrington area and District 2? How can we improve the economics of this area, writ large?
Well, to answer the second part first, since it kind of ties back into what you said originally, this whole corridor leading up to the main gate is on septic tank. So there's not a whole lot of economic activity that wants to come into this area, in this Warrington corridor, since it's on septic. And it is, like you said, it's a huge cost. I'm not sure what the commercial rate is, but I've heard between 10 and 12,000 residential to get tapped on. And you may know, it's not that, okay. But it is a huge cost. So how do we get that? And that's where the government needs to be focused when it comes to job creation. We need to be focused on the infrastructure, getting the groundwork laid, and let the private sector come in to do what they do best and create the jobs, instead of going out picking winners and losers and that sort of thing. Now, as far as incentives, that is something that we deal with, and we've had some luck in some areas, but I want to see, especially in this area, if we're going to incentivize people, let's try to incentivize employers to hire folks that have had criminal records. Something that we found during the pandemic was all these folks calling, needing employees in the service industry in particular, and can't find anybody. You know, people just want to stay home at this point and not go to work. Well, we started working with folks like Vinnie Wibbs at REAP, the Reentry Alliance of Pensacola, and finding out that there is a huge population of people here that have records that are just needing that one chance to prove themselves in order to get back on their feet. Why can't we find those types of opportunities when we've got so many people in this area that have issues like that? One of the employers told me that when they started doing this, they said the employees we have now are the best we've ever had. We know within 2 weeks. If they're still here after 2 weeks, they're a great employee. We never have to worry about them. So helping in those areas, you know, finding those ways, working with the private sector to identify the types of things we need in the community as well. And working with our educational partners, both at the school board and at PSC and UWF, to try to find programs where we can specialize in getting people trained for these jobs. You know, not everybody's going to go to college. You can be a successful person without ever going to college, but it seems like we went down this road for so long where we push everybody to college. Everything's graded on whether or not you're going to be able to qualify to go to college. Well, we've got to change that dynamic, and I think it's happening more and more now, but we've got to look for the opportunities in our area, and again, the things that we want to see here in 10 years and start preparing for those things now. There was a Triumph grant that was given to Eastern Shipbuilding a couple of years ago. They won a huge Coast Guard contract. And at the time, they didn't have enough welders to fill the job. They ended up having to bring people in from out of state to start working on the job. And that's the absolute opposite that we need to be having. If we're trying to actually help our people here in this district, we've got to be ready for those opportunities. And we've got to be able to have folks trained on the jobs we want to see here. Oh, and the base. Yeah, we attended that joint use study recently. And again, being able to plan how we deal with the base. I mean, it's such an economic driver here. I know we've had a lot of discussion in the last year about access on the base with the tourism aspect and all, but the base's main focus, its only priority, is being able to train our service members. So how can we as a county work with the base and be a good partner so we don't have any kind of reductions in missions? Santa Rosa County has done a great job over at Whiting in being able to buffer around that base. Now, we don't have that luxury. We've got a lot of development around our base, but how can we find those opportunities to work with the folks there? We're not disrupting the flight path and things like that. And again, it still goes back to education in a way, where how are we making this area right outside the gate as good as it can be so we're BRAC proof, or we're not in risk of losing any missions. I mean, when folks come here and they're, going to that base, they've got to drive either down Gulf Beach Highway or right down Navy, and that's not the best picture we want to give for folks who are visiting this base. So I think it's a huge issue, and it's again something that we've got to take care of now if we want to make it better in the next few years. Keith?
Go ahead and ask my question. On the right hand, you've got the roads that we need to do for the county. On the left hand, we've got the drainage that Chris needs to get done.
We're having trouble hearing you, Keith, but you're not loud enough.
Is this better? All right, so you have the roads on the one hand, you have the drainage on the other hand, and I'm sure there's a comprehensive plan for each of them. Do they meld together? And because when you do one, you need to be doing both. The roads obviously have to be higher than the drainage. So are they independent of each other, or are they produced as a shovel-ready plan that takes both of them at the same time? Because that seems to be a number one priority, especially when you get floods and hurricanes. And the lighting going down Blue Angel up north is really bad. That should be another, but again, we have the drainage and the roads. So Chris is going to work with whoever gets put in that position. All right, but is there a comprehensive shovel-ready plan right now if they had the funds so they don't get lost? Could we go with it? Where are we at on that?
To my knowledge, we have not made any type of plan to work with folks like ECUA as far as when the timeline is to get these things done. But that's exactly what we need to do. So we're not having to go out there and continually do something. We need to be working to get more lights ready to go out there on Gulf Beach and Sorrento as well. You're exactly right. We don't need to be up there tearing up the road more than once when we finally get this done. So it's again trying to find ways to work with our partners at ECUA to. One
is county and one is state, and there's probably federal in there somewhere also.
Well, and ECUA is a special district. It's in between, so it's.
That's better.
So exactly, you've got all these different levels of bureaucracy that you've got to be able to navigate, and that's unfortunately how the system's been set up now. And it's set up by these bureaucrats who want to keep the money to do with what they feel like should be done from their offices in Tallahassee or Washington or wherever. And if you don't understand how to fight that and how to get what is actually needed on the ground, you're going to lose out to it every time.
I can tell you how to fight it. You can show up for the budget workshops on July, was it 12th, 13th, and 14th, I believe it is. That's when they're going to talk about budgets with Escambia County.
I have kind of seen them sabotage each other, though. ECUA will say they've got a small gravity, supposedly working sewer dripping down the middle of Navy Boulevard where it extends from Garden. And they say, well, it's there, but we can't tie into it. So you're right, all those big businesses there have like 2 toilets and a sink, and they really can't do more because they've got a certain size septic tank. So even down Navy Boulevard, when they were redoing sidewalks and repaving the road like 10 years ago, repaving part of it, we asked for ECUA to jet under because we're on the west side of Navy Boulevard, and they wouldn't do it. They said, no, we have to get a federal variance in order to do anything like that that might disrupt the Navy traffic. Well, not if you go under. There is technology to go underneath the road. Hello.
Yeah, it's boring.
Very firm road, because I remember they used to tow airplanes from NAS to Ford Field, and they shut down the road for the airplane to go down, and they untied the power poles and hung them on one side. It sounds bizarre, but it is possible, and that's back when NARF was here. So we're talking 3 hours of solid traffic, not this little bit. So ECUA will say, well, it's not the right time, or, oh, we don't have the funds in order. And we have seen TPO priority, as things go up in Navy Boulevard, be brought down because of Navy Federal and all that stuff going on out in Beulah. And 3 of the county commissioners just decided, we're going to yank that one down a little bit. We'll call FDOT and tell them to move that. And they did. It went down, I don't remember, 20 or 30 slots. So, I mean, it happens. But you have got to go on the paperwork and read the fine print and go blind trying to find that record. And you'll just get, there was 3 commissioners, and it didn't even list which 3 commissioners like it is. But, so, yeah, so to answer the question over there, they do sabotage each other, and it's a method of convenience. No, we're not going to do that now.
But that's where we've got to start leading by example to be better too. It starts on the dais, and people complain. I mean, folks complain all the time about how little respect they have for the government nowadays, and I don't blame them. I mean, look what some of these folks are doing. So we've got to be better. We've got to be our best, and you should expect our best. You should hold us accountable if we're not doing our best.
A little bit about me, if you don't know who I am and what I've done. I started off in 1976, was my first year in Escambia County teaching. I taught deaf students at West Pensacola Elementary. And I taught in the deaf program, and at that time the program was growing, and as it spread from elementary to middle school to high school, I kind of grew with it. I was asked to be the administrator when it was large enough to have an administrator for it, but I was the administrator for the deaf and the blind. A couple years later, I was asked to assume the responsibility for the physically impaired program and other health impaired, and then to develop the OT and PT programs in the school, adapted PE. Then I took over hospital homebound, due process, and medically fragile. What you don't know, it's kind of like, it's God's way of getting you prepared for things, okay? You're given stuff and you have opportunities. You don't see it that way at first sometimes. You say, why do I keep getting more and more and more to do? But what it did is prepared me for what I ended up doing in 2000. The superintendent at that time was Jim Paul, and Jim asked me to be his assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And I did that for 12 years, and in 2012 I retired. I took care of myself physically with medical stuff and what have you, and family things, working them out. And in 2018, when Jerry Boone decided he wasn't going to run again, Jerry asked me to run for school board. And I says, well, Jerry, I kind of browbeat you into doing that, and I guess I need to take my own medicine if I'm going to do it. I will tell you this, one of the worst experiences of my life is running for public office, okay? People are mean, nasty, and cruel, and that's just the other candidates. but the thing about it is, I grew up in poverty. I grew up having to take care of myself, kind of a neglectful family situation. And the hardest thing for me is to ask somebody to do something for me. I've always had to take care of myself, and I've always taken it upon myself to help others. I went into deaf education to help children. And when I went into the administration, I said, I need to help the children and I need to help the parents. And if I don't do that, then I'm not doing my job. And I worked that way my entire career. I took the time to listen to anybody who wanted to speak with me. Ronnie Arnold, who's my campaign manager for this and longtime friend, there was one lady in particular who would want to meet with me every week for 4 hours. And staff would say, why are you sitting there and listening to the same thing? I says, because she needs to have somebody to talk to. And I felt that way, and I felt that way especially about the parents of handicapped kids. Those parents have no one else they could confide in, and if they wanted to yell, be angry, or get mad, do it to me. Don't go home and take it out on your child. Don't go home and take it out on your spouse, because the highest divorce rate of anybody going are the parents of handicapped kids. All right, now I have done more than just with handicap. In the 12 years as assistant superintendent, worked with the district through the No Child Left Behind program, a Race to the Top, all the other things, all the accountability measures. And there's more that people don't understand about school grades than they do. One of the biggest problems at Warrington Middle School is the students who have left, okay? Every school has students who struggle. And every school has kids who excel. Even the lowest performing on the grading system school has level 5 kids, high performers. What it is, it's the proportion of how many level 1s to level 5s that bring those grades down. All right? So what's happened is 400 students from Warrington Middle School who should attend this year opted out and took choice to go elsewhere. They weren't the kids who were struggling for the most part, or the parents who couldn't provide transportation to another school. These were the kids who would have been the higher ones to bring the grades up. And that's been historically over the last several years. I don't make excuses. I think that every child needs the best education we could give them. We need to work to it. We should never have students who are not succeeding. We shouldn't, but I also am going to be a realist. There are sometimes that kids who really live in poverty are too angry to be able to avail themselves of education. And as teachers and as people in schools, we need to go and work with those kids to get them to separate what happens at home and what happens at school. We could help you with the education part. We can't always help what happens at school. Now, I'm talking about a lot of stuff here, and I know that you may have questions, you may or may not, but I'm going into this for a second term because I feel that Escambia County, I put 38 years of my life and my career into the kids and the families of Escambia County, and I want to make sure that this community, that this district is getting the best that it could get. I'm not sitting here saying I'm the best person in the world. My background with what I do know about education should be very influential in making decisions about who really understands what goes on, what needs to go on, what can go on in classrooms. I know that there are others. I am a very conservative Christian person. I don't want us to indoctrinate anybody into anything. And I don't want to waste taxpayers' dollars, okay? We have been very good stewards. I want to thank everybody in this room who voted for the half-cent sales tax for our capital projects in the school district, because it has been a lifesaver with what's happened with buildings. The new Pleasant Grove Elementary School, the new Myrtle Grove Elementary School, the new Beulah Middle School, the new Kingsfield Elementary, on and on, new Global Learning Academy. From a facility standpoint, this district is in excellent shape, but it's in excellent shape because the public has given us the half-cent sales tax to do that. Now, I don't want to pick on Kevin, but one of the things that did happen differently with the school district versus Board of County Commission is this. When the half-cent sales tax first went into operation in the late 1990s, 98 I think was the first year, everything was divided by district. So as a school board member, I'm elected by the constituents who live in District 2. And so initially, all the half-cent sales tax was done, okay, we'll split it. If it's $15 million, each district's going to get $3 million. Well, the need is not the same in each district, okay? District 2 and District 3 in particular were really had the oldest schools in the worst condition and were run down. But it took probably 10 years for school board members to understand that giving everybody the same amount isn't necessarily the best thing. And I say this, the Board of County Commissions may want to look at that too. There are different needs in different districts. Stormwater runoff in District 2 is very different from District 5. District 5 doesn't need the same amount, in my opinion. The other thing that's happened is, as a school board member, I'm elected by the membership in District 2, but when I take the oath of office on the school board, I am charged to serve every student in the county, not just the students in District 2. And that's the way I operated when I worked in the school district, and I still do. I want District 2 students to get everything they can, but I also want the ones who live in Cordova Park and Molino Park and Beulah to get what they need to be successful also. And so giving everybody an equal amount doesn't always make it equal as how it plays out. Now, I've run my mouth kind of long enough. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer anything you want to talk about. Yeah, Stan.
How do we get the federal Department of Education out of our schools?
You don't. And the reason is they have so much funding that's tied to it that you can't get them out. Once they start to offer the money, you can't get rid of them. And then there's all the requirements that go with it, okay? Once you take the first dollar, then you're tied in.
So we maybe communicate with the governor to stop that?
Well, you may, but... Well, you may look at it that way, but the money that comes in for Title I and for special education is all federal money, okay? And it's going to be hard to replace the millions of dollars that are coming in from the state at this point. Now, the other thing that, and my kind of bias about it is this. Most people don't understand that the State Board of Education that was created in the early 2000s has a lot of control, and they've assumed more and more control every year, okay? So the State Board of Education, who doesn't have a single educator on it, okay, not a single one, is making all the decisions. That has been the body that has controlled what's happened at Warrington Middle School, Warrington Elementary, and any of the ones that fall into what they call SINI, schools in need of improvement. So any of those schools who are a D or an F that go into that are controlled by the State Board of Education, who says you must hire this principal, you must use this external operator to oversee you, and you must hire teachers according to this, this, and this. And that has been catastrophic at Warrington Middle School. Okay? They've had 3 principals in 5 years. The lack of consistent leadership works against good education. And that's what's happened because the state board said, you must get rid of that person. You know, Brett Brummett was within a percentage of a point, not a whole point, from making the C when he was there. Okay? And they made made Escambia County replace him the next year after his first year being there. But they got within 1 point. And there's other things, and these are all details, and I want to make sure that if you have questions, that I answer your questions more than go on to the things that I would rant about.
I've got a question.
Yes?
The state board,
Mm-hmm.
is that an elected body?
No.
They're appointed?
They're appointed by the governor. Yeah. There are no elected state board members. And they also have complete control over the Department of Education.
Can
Yes,
I-
sir.
Real quick,
Well, can you step up to the mic? We need to hear from you. Okay.
just a quick question.
Yeah, come on.
As far as the where the schools are being built,
Right.
is the school board in charge of those?
Yes.
So, just real quick, why would they put it on roads that are having issues?
There's several reasons that you would do that. Number one is the availability of land, and land that's sufficient to meet the requirements for the facility. And I believe that an elementary school has to have 11 acres, middle school 15 to 20 acres, and high school has to have over 50 acres to be approved for that. And so part of the thing that Kevin and I have talked about, and others, why do we in District 2 have schools who have no sidewalks that lead to them? Because there's requirements for, walk distance for buses. We had a terrible situation with the lack of bus drivers last year. Kids were late all the time, which doesn't help with the academic part of it. But we're having kids walk from what used to be, the names now, at the end of Lillian Highway, where the shopping grocery store is.
Lillian Highway, Fairfield.
No, beyond that, where the chicken box used to be. Well, no, Lillian Highway going east. No, going east. Lillian Highway going east, okay? And where the chicken box restaurant was. What was that? Yeah, the circle. Okay. It's because I'm old. I'm not. From the circle, high school students have to walk to Escambia High. There are no sidewalks along Lillian Highway. It's for high school. It's a longer distance, and so we can't transport them. And if we do, because of hazardous walking, we don't get funded for it. We spend over $1.5 million a year transporting students who we get no funding for because of hazardous walking, because there are no sidewalks or there are major roads that the kids have to cross. But I worked with this one parent in particular who lived at the end of Lillian there, and their daughter had to walk to Escambia High every morning. She says, it's been raining like crazy. There's mud puddles where she has to go, and if she goes into the street, she's going to get hit by a car. Why won't you give her a ride? I says, we can't do it. Number one, we don't get paid for it. Number two, we don't have a driver to run the route because every bus we had was so full. Okay? But those are some of the things that go to it. I hope that answered your question. Now, we do have a 5-year plan to look at replacing buildings. That's like, at this point, Myrtle Grove Elementary was the oldest one built in 1938. Okay? And it's being replaced. Raising the two main buildings will happen this fall. We're going to put modular units in on the ground to keep the kids on that campus, but they'll stay in there until that old building is torn down, and it'll be a new 2-story one, kind of like the new Pleasant Grove Elementary is 2-story.
Let's give him a big hand. Can you hold your question just for a second?
Out on the back, not a question. You may not recognize me way back here, but I'm Buzz Ritchie. I want to tell you, the friends here, when you first got elected, you took time out of your schedule. You had everywhere to go in the county, and you came to Capstone Academy, which is a public charter school. 30 students. Was it why 30 students? They all have autism or other disabilities.
Right.
But Paul, he walks the walk and talks the talk. He does what he says. I was so impressed that day.
Well, I thank you so much. And COVID messed me up because what I've tried to do is after the board meeting, our board meetings are always the third Tuesday of the month, and I use the rest of that week to visit all the schools in District 2 and other schools where I know that there's issues, because that's what I did my whole career. I had students in my programs who were in every school in this district. So I've set foot and I've walked and I've gone into classrooms, not since COVID though. So I will admit that. Well, somebody says, I haven't seen you in the last 2 years. No, you haven't. We were asked to stay out of the schools, and then I had a bout of COVID that had me hospitalized and out for a long time. But in the meantime, I will be back with the new school year visiting the schools in District 2 and any others that ask me to come on a monthly basis.
It's gotten kind of quiet. I'd like to go back to the karaoke that we started with. I didn't know that would. Can you hear me okay? I'm trying to not yell into this mic. It's kind of close to me.
Slide just a little bit to the right. No, the other right.
That is my right.
That's good. Thanks.
Thanks, Keith. All right, that's better. My name's Paul Hamlin. I'm running for County Court Judge to replace Pat Kinsey, who's retiring. So it's an open seat, and that's what I'm running for. I've been a lawyer for about 22 years here in Pensacola. Prior to that, I was in the Marine Corps, flew F-4s and F-18s on all-weather day and night missions from land bases and aircraft carriers around the world. But before I go into anything, though, what I want to do is ask, what can a county court judge do for you people? Not as individuals handling, bring your case to me separately, but a lot of people don't even know who their county court judges are or what they do. And so instead of me telling you things, I want to know what you expect or what you desire from a county court judge. Go ahead.
Punish the guilty ones, mainly.
Right. Well, I think one of the primary jobs of a county court judge is to protect the community. And how we do that, there's different ways to do that. Of course, locking them up is that does it. I mean, I'm not saying that's the last resort. That may be the first resort. Every case is different, and each individual that comes before the court has a different history and background with the court. So, it's hard to make a just a pat answer. But does everyone else share that concern that keeping people in jail to prevent danger to the community is a primary function? Is that what you want to see from your county court judge? Okay. What else? Go ahead, sir.
I wouldn't necessarily say keeping them in jail, but certainly working, perhaps influencing the prosecutor's office to consistently prosecute crimes and not, the hand slap and go away and go back out to the street. I think that would be a role that you could have some influence on.
Right. The county court is misdemeanor crimes, punishable up to a year in jail maximum. So, it's not the murder cases and things like that. But people in the misdemeanor court still have a great impact on our community with the things that they do. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm going to go into I'll give you a little bit on my history after, but that's why I wanted to jump all that, and get to some meaningful things. I want them to not come back. I want them to go, when they come before the court, I don't want them coming back. So if it means putting them in jail to get their attention, or if it means helping them get a driver's license so that they don't come back. But if they don't come back, then it's good for them, of course, and it's good for the community. So that would be my goal: is don't come back again. And there's a lot of ways that you can fashion that, and it's an individual thing. And you need to take the time to listen to the people that are before you to help you, make those decisions. But yes, that's a good point. These people, I've been doing this for 22 years. I've got, if you look at the clerk's statistics, I'm on who's assigned to a case or who's the attorney of record. I've got 1,898 cases that I've been on in the last 7 or 8 years. They've been keeping track of that in Escambia County alone. I've got another 280 in Santa Rosa. So I've been around to see all this, and people complain or they're not satisfied when they aren't heard. When you come to court and you leave without getting your say, that's when people are dissatisfied. But a lot of these folks are riding on the edge of a huge ditch. They're barely scraping by in life, really. Not necessarily of their own fault, but it's one more straw in the back, and they're in the ditch. And that affects all of us when that happens. So you've got to have some compassion and some understanding and listening to where these people come from in order to fashion something that'll work for them. So I'm a grumpy old Marine, so to be compassionate, thank you, Semper Fi. So to put compassion in it doesn't seem to fit the Marine Corps standard, but I'm not an active duty Marine out, with bullets being shot at me. So I've mellowed over my years and of being around other people. So go ahead.
So it's misdemeanors.
It's
in this county. So like, what kind of drugs and drug trafficking?
That's
So that's not you then, is it?
right. Drugs and drug trafficking that's a felony. Misdemeanors are like possession of marijuana up to a certain amount. Yeah, you're right. Petty theft, but she was talking about drugs specifically. That's why. Yeah. Civil cases up to $30,000 in controversy. That's going up to $50,000 before too long. But so you have the civil liabilities up to $30,000.
Can I just say that I would like to have a judge that could evaluate, parse out the two different sides of any specific argument. So
that's what you want in the judge, is that you can hear the both sides, take all the information that's provided by both sides, with both being able to get all the information that they want to provide. And
I need to prove I'm not cute.
you need to prove you're not cute.
Yes.
I can think
I have a bad situation going on.
you're not cute.
I'm not cute.
If you're not, did you say you're not cute?
No, cute.
Cute.
QAnon.
Okay.
There's
I thought you said cute, and I was.
Star Trek.
When you said you're not cute, I was thinking we can solve that right now. You're not cute.
I'll tell you about it sometime.
Okay. So I think that's a good amount of information that you've given me. And those are things that I've thought about before. Attempting to get this job. But just a little background on me. I was born in Vermont. Grew up in Vermont. Transplanted to Florida because I wanted to go to Florida and to a place that had Division II football. Back when they had those divisions, and St. Leo College down near Tampa was the only place I could do that. So I went to college, got out, went to the Marine Corps, spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. Like I said, flying the F-4 Phantom and F-18 Hornet. People say thanks for your service, and I say no. I thank you. I get to fly around and blow stuff up. So it's really me thanking people that have the ability to do that. Been a lot of places in the military. Flight school took me to Pensacola, of course, and we have a lot of people that come back from wherever they go on to come back to Pensacola. When I get out, I could have moved anywhere, lived anywhere, but I chose to come to Pensacola. So about 30 some odd years ago, I came back to Pensacola, and I've been here ever since. I went to law school in Gainesville. So that Florida thing, I promise to be fair and unbiased if a Florida State person comes before me in court. I've got some stories about Top Gun, but yeah, I was stationed out there when they were filming it, so I've seen Tom Cruise. But I'll tell you in a second. I was flying F-4s, and our squadron was sent to Japan. We was in Japan for 8 months. On our return to the States, we were supposed to transition to the F-18 new airplanes. Only 4 of us were going to stay in the squadron and stand up the squadron. And we had 2 Top Gun slots. One was for me, and we had saved a bunch of money for fuel, so that when we got back, we could still operate the old airplanes. My CO and the group CO didn't see eye to eye. So when we landed back in Beaufort, South Carolina, all ready to do all this, they said, shut them down, give your Top Gun quotas to somebody out to the next squadron, and you guys are done. So I missed out on Top Gun, but I have flown against them a lot because regular squadrons can go fly against them. You know, they have an adversary program, so we go out. So I've flown against Top Gun airplanes before, which is a pretty interesting thing. But Tom Cruise, I just tell you, I don't, divert, but Tom Cruise, when they were filming that, he allegedly drove a Porsche that had a Top Gun tag on it, and so he lived in Laguna Hills, and we had a maintenance exchange pilot from Australia, and we used to have squadron functions at his house, which was in the lower lands headed up to Laguna Hills. So we used to sit out in the road waiting for Tom Cruise to come by, because we were going to get that license plate back, because he didn't rate it. He didn't go to Top Gun, so he didn't rate it. But we never did find him, so he got away with it, I guess. And
the service understand that.
Right.
You don't rate it, you don't get it.
Right, and he but he kind of made it up in the new movie. Has everybody seen the new movie? Oh, you got to see it. I was surprised that I was able to sit and watch it without critiquing it. You know, whatever your profession is, if you're a doctor or engineer, whatever, you watch a movie or something, and you're like, well, that doesn't work that way. But it was a good movie. I didn't have a lot of criticism for it. Some of the things are a little wide ranging.
His stuntman is one of our top pilots. He was in the paper and he's now on TV. His stuntman.
Oh, yeah, the guy that flew for the Blues, right?
Yeah, that's his stuntman.
Yeah.
He's one of our pilots.
Yep. I can tell you that a lot of the scenes are very accurate. The flying scenes are real accurate. I mean, going through the mountains and things like that, it's really accurate. No, he was in the back seat. All the filming makes it look like he's in the front, but he actually is a pilot, and he does own a P-51 Mustang. So he does fly. I think that all started with the first Top Gun that he began that. But so from the military, I then went back to law school. So I was a little late in life going to law school. I say I was 38 when I started law school, and I was 35 when I got out. It was a 3-year thing, but being around all those young minds and things, it kind of makes you a little bit younger too. Came back here. I worked for the Public Defender's Office for 8 years. Part of my goal when I went to law school was to work at the Public Defender's Office when I got done, because I felt the public defenders kind of get a bad statement every once in a while, but they're lawyers like everybody else, and there's a lot of good lawyers in the public defender's office. So, the stigma that the public defender's office are second rate is not correct. The public defenders do a lot of good with a lot of cases without a lot of compensation. So my goal was to get back to be a public defender and help people, which I don't mean in an arrogant way, but to get a lawyer that would could possibly be a private attorney. They would get that quality of an attorney with the public defender. So I spent 8 years there. The caseload's it's high. It's high. The whole court system is high. If you look at the amount of time, we have like a thing called plea day or docket day, where all the cases come in before a judge that has the certain in a certain time frame. People get probably 15 seconds in front of the judge. I mean, you can't hear the whole case and listen to everything, but I mean, the average amount of time that's spent on each case is low, especially for like the public defender's office that has a high volume. So I left the public defender's office and worked for a big insurance defense firm doing civil work for about a little over 4 years. The billable hour is what they operate on. Everything you bill is how 0.1 of an hour, 0.2 of an hour. Sometimes you spend so much time documenting your 0.1s and 2s that it takes 9 or 10 hours to bill 8 hours, 8.5 hours. You can't, because you can't sit down at your desk from the beginning to the end of the day. There's things in between, and there's things that you don't necessarily bill. But they have a way of making that billing work. Some of the things I don't want to criticize them, but you're keeping track of your own time, and when you're expected to bill 2,000, 2,200 hours a year, people get it. That's the power of the pen, I guess, at some points, sometimes. But so after 4 years or so there, I was ready to open my own law firm, and I started a firm about 10 years ago that I worked with my son there for a little while. Got him kind of on his feet, and he's on his own. But so I spent 10 years in private practice. I'm still working my cases. I've had three trials in about the last 5 weeks, one of which was a murder trial. I've got a murder trial coming up in another couple weeks, so I'm still deeply involved in that. But I'm not taking any more cases so that I can finish up with that and devote 100% of my time to this endeavor. Go ahead. I know you've been waiting. Sorry.
Yeah. So we have like $895,000 in campaign finance funds for Escambia County and the city and the ECUA. I added them all up. And yet still we have so many uneducated voters. And I know that you're limited to a lot of questions that can't be answered or asked.
Right.
And would you be willing to sit down with the commission and come up with a solution of how maybe we could work with the commission to question the judges based on their past cases or something, and so that the public can be more informed on just who they're voting for when it comes to judges, because this is a very important job for the voters to elect. As someone who's stood before a few judges, I know just how important it is, to have someone that is going to have some compassion at some point,
I think on the ballot, the judges, county judges, are the last thing on the list. So people get to the end of the ballot, and they perhaps don't even know who those people are, and it's kind of put to the side a little bit. A judge can take your house, can take your child, can take your liberty. I mean, those are some pretty big deals there, and if we don't sometimes even know who it is, and we're just checking boxes or not checking anything. So yes, I agree with you. The judicial races are different than regular politicians. We can't ask for money. We can't answer questions about current cases. We can't answer how we might do things. So you can get to know us personally, I guess, and I think that is an important thing, because I may not be able to talk about specifics, but having been here before and tonight, in the philosophy that Michael is trying to perpetuate, you get to know the people. I mean, you kind of will have an idea who I am by the time I'm done. A few times being here, so you can base your vote on that. Somewhat what you can expect from me. But I'd be happy to do that. And there's some of the League of Women Voters, I think, puts out a paper, a booklet on all the candidates and things like that.
I heard they asked a lot of questions though that you couldn't answer.
I guess that starts. We have to back that up to the Judicial Qualifying Committee that makes those rules for lawyers that are running for judge. So,
like a panel, maybe that knows the questions, could pull some of your files.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think you're talking about your old cases that you've presided over and what happens. You know, I don't know what the statistics are. I'm sure there's statistics kept somewhere. You know, this judge gives is a hard sentencer. You know, this judge always gives the max. You know, we lawyers that operate in town, we know who those are. We know the consequences of getting in front of certain judges. And you know that it's amazing how the difference in judges affects how you do the case. I mean, there's people that they'll take a deal. They maybe didn't do it, but when you're faced with the risk reward factor of, okay, if you lose, I've got a 19-year-old kid that's he's deciding whether to go to trial or not, coming up for murder. It's first-degree felony murder. If he loses, he's going to die in prison. He's 19 years old. He will never get out of prison. And men live to 82, 83 years. He's going to spend 60 years in prison and then die there. He'll never be out to have 4th of July with his family, his mom, or anything. Now, I mean, it's a murder case, so I mean, we're not going to be sympathetic to somebody that's taking somebody else's life. But the point being is, it's a risk reward kind of thing. So he's got to decide. I've got a deal for him for, and I'm not talking specifics or any names or anything, but about 20 years, which means he'll spend about 15 before he gets out. So he'll know what it is that he's getting. Vice taking his chances with dying in prison, and that happens on a smaller basis too. I just said that that one because that one's a bigger deal. But people, because of the way that they know this judge is going to handle it, well, I can't risk it, so I'll take a deal. That's, if I could change something, that would be something that I would. I don't know how you do it. You can chip away at things, and there's so much in our system. It's like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, we can try to do these things in our own communities, and the judges ought to reflect the mores of the community. But that's and that leads to a whole bunch of other things. Judges that have no discretion. There's mandatory sentences. The judge has to impose it. Do we want the judge to be flexible and not have that? Do we want the judge to have discretion, or do we want it to be a mandatory thing? Because some judges, frankly, we don't want them to have discretion. We want to box them into things they can do. But other judges, we want them to have leeway. But going back to what you're talking about, so I don't know statistically it's kept that this judge has got sentences an average of this many amount of months, and this one does. But I mean, that'd be something that'd be very interesting to keep and find out about. I don't know that you could change any of the judges' minds. That I think they get callous. They're on the bench for so long, and they see murder after drug trafficking. Everybody. Gets complacent, and callous to it. So one of the things you got to try to do, and when I was at the public defender's office, sometimes I've had 10 appointments in a row meeting with clients, and that would frankly wear you down, because you're taking on somebody's problems, and you're trying to help them. And so you try to treat the 10th person the same way you did the first, and by the time you went through those other 9, it's kind of difficult to do. So I think a judge really needs to keep that mindset that when a person comes in front of you, and some of them act out and are not pleasant to the court or to the judge, you can't hold that against the 3 people. You got to shake it off, and go on to the next one and take them on their individual cases. So that you bring up a very good point, and you're stuck with the judge you get anyway. You can't do what they call it forum shopping. You can't try to get it to another more favorable judge. It may work in other states. I guess it doesn't work here. So, I don't know. You would at least be aware. That's, the thing I want to do is be consistent. If you come in before me, Chris, or you come before me, it's got to be, everything. There's all different factors, but we got to be fair to everyone and consistent, so people know what they're getting. So a lawyer, when they've got a client going in front of this judge, they can advise them, and they can have a, know what to expect, because knowing what to expect makes a big difference in how I handle a case. If I'm, and I've been around a long time, so I have an idea what most judges are going to do. John Simon was in a good mood today, Judge John Simon, because Ole Miss won the College World Series. So I don't know if somebody got a break today or not, but do we need to? Yeah. Okay. Sure.
So you referenced Pat Kinsey. So looking at Pat's well known in her philosophy and that kind of thing. So you following in Pat's footsteps, how would we look at your philosophy as being similar or the same as Pat's?
Come here and ask that question. That's a very good question.
These things just pop into my brain.
Right, but the people need to hear this question.
Okay. So you mentioned that you hope to follow Pat Kinsey, and how judges do come from their own, are products of their own life experiences as well as the law. Mm-hmm. And so how would you look at your philosophy of being a judge in comparison to Pat Kinsey's? Are you as stone hard as her, or as compassionate as her? Or, how do you look at yourself as if Pat was in your courtroom? Would she be going, yes, yes, yes? Or would she be shaking her head no?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
This job, Pat Kinsey has a civil division. So she's doing not criminal cases now. It's a separate civil division. That division is right. That's it's money issues in civil court. So that's slated to remain a civil division for at least the next 2 years, and then there may be some rotation. Now I don't know that that's in hard. Right?
Your office is available for you to run because Pat is retiring.
It is. There's five. Yeah, there's 5 county court judges. Four of them do, or there's 4. 3 of them do criminal cases, and Pat does the civil cases. The ones up to $30,000 and
You're not slated. Your office is not slated to be the civil.
It's to replace her, which is civil. So you wouldn't be doing criminal stuff immediately, but they do rotate and things like that. Pat Kinsey is she's puts a great effort into amount of effort in doing her job. She's very organized, and she takes her job seriously, and she puts a lot of effort into it. I would tell you honestly, her philosophy and mine are different. She's done criminal in the past, and she was a tough sentencer, and there was no debating it. So our philosophy is different in that regard, but civilly, she does a great job in that division, doing civil stuff. That's money issues, a little different than I don't know how much compassion is involved in the money stuff, but money people, I tell you, money issues are more important than jail to some people.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate those of you that have stuck this out. It's definitely probably a little later than you thought you were going to be. Good news is one of the things and one of the reasons I'm running is because I think efficiency in the courtroom is important. So I'm going to be efficient. I'm not going to talk to you any longer than I have to introduce myself, and I do want to leave you a chance to ask me questions. I'm a lifelong Escambia County resident, grew up here, Pine Meadow Elementary, Wedgwood Middle, Tate High School. Went to the University of Florida where I earned my finance degree, Florida State University where I got my law degree, so I covered both of them. I actually did do some classes at both UWF and PSC too, so I've covered my bases on all the universities around here. I started my career in civil practice, doing mostly insurance defense. I did some products liability, some insurance law. And then fell in love with the courtroom. We got a little bit of exposure to the courtroom doing the insurance work, and I just knew that I needed to be in a courtroom. So I made a phone call to Jack Bear and Bill Edens, the state attorney and the public defender. Jack Bear called me back, so I took the job, and I've been with them about 17 years. I'm on leave now to run the campaign, but prior to that, I was currently working as the felony supervisor, which means I was supervising 4 different divisions or 8 attorneys in felony divisions, as well as handling a caseload in drug court. At one point, I was supervising 60 attorneys and 60 support staff across 6 offices in 4 counties. So I have experience dealing with personnel and budgeting and the complications that come with trying to wrangle that many cats. 17 years in the PD's office, our felony attorneys handle somewhere between 300 and 500 cases a year, depending on the year. So 17 years there, I've handled a lot of cases. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours in the courtroom. I've done everything from a reckless driving trial to not guilty by reason of insanity murders and some work on death penalty cases. When you deal with the kind of administrative complications that come from supervising attorneys and support staff, you do have to learn how to follow the rules. I mean, everybody that works anywhere has rules at their office, and those rules have to be followed. But everybody that works with you has their own life, their own set of circumstances, and their own situation that leads them in front of you to talk about why that rule is broken. And you have to take both into account. You have to follow the rule, and then you have to be fair in how you impose that rule. It's interesting. I could hear most of what you were asking or your comments were. And I did hear Kevin when he was here earlier, and I have found on the campaign trail, the more and more voters that I talk to and the more citizens I talk to, the more clear it is that public safety is the main priority for a lot of citizens. And the question or the comment was made about locking them up. Well, there are circumstances where locking them up may not be the answer, but the reality is that the primary purpose of the criminal sentencing is punishment. That's what it's for. And if you can find a way to craft a sentence in a way where you can help them, because I agree with Paul, you don't want them to come back over and over and over. So if you can craft a way that gives them an opportunity with your sentence, then you should. But the primary point of sentencing is punishment. And that's the law. That's not my judicial philosophy. That's not how I feel about it. That's the law that I would have to follow as a judge, because that's what the law says is the primary purpose. But yes, sure. I mean, the other question was about compassion, and it is interesting in the same room that you get questions about being hard in sentencing and also being compassionate in sentencing, and definitely that's the balance, right? I mean, we think about Lady Justice with the blindfold and the scales, and that's supposed to mean that way for a lot of different things. Punishment versus the fairness. It's not the same there are different ways to commit the same crime, right? And so it may not be the same as stealing a DVD from Walmart, and it may not be the same as stealing baby formula. But they're both a crime, and you got to be punished for both, right? So I think all of that gives me the experience to handle the docket. As we come out of COVID, the court dockets are more and more backed up. They're not going anywhere. They're not getting any lighter. The court system's not getting any additional funding and resources. It takes somebody with experience handling those massive dockets, those huge caseloads, and being able to run through them efficiently. It's also important that a judge takes care of your tax dollars. And that sounds maybe not judges don't get involved in a lot of things. Like, we're not talking about how we're going to fund infrastructure projects for septic tanks, right? That's just not what's coming through for a judge. But judges do affect everybody's lives in a way that you may not feel directly. I was speaking with some firefighters earlier today, and they were talking about somebody they worked with that got a DUI. Well, I mean, you got to figure out how you're going to sentence that guy appropriately. I mean, he's out there being a public servant to the community, but he's still got to get punished. So that's a challenge, and that's part of what the balancing act is as a judge. I said I'd be efficient, but what I was going to say about being careful with taxpayer money, and why I'm talking about being efficient is every time a judge is in court, I mean, Paul mentioned it, we have these massive dockets, maybe 200 or 300 people on a docket. Just do the math on how long you can spend on a case and be out of there in an 8 or 9 or a 10-hour day. Well, every second you're not calling a case is wasting somebody's time, right? It's wasting the people whose cases haven't been called yet. It's wasting the time of the court security officers, wasting the time of the clerk, it's wasting the time of the court reporters. So all of those, you've got to be ready to call cases. You got to be ready to keep them going. And of course, everybody needs their fair amount of time, but there's a lot of dead time in those courtrooms that could be used. There's a lot of times where cases are called that aren't ready to be called. And those are things that can be improved on, and they can make better use of the time that you're spending for the court to be in session. Questions? Yes.
Give you the same question. Did you hear me?
I did. And so I will give you a little bit of a nuanced answer, but I promise you it's an honest one. So this is for Judge Kinsey's seat, as you asked, and this is entirely at this point a civil division. So it's small claims, civil disputes up to 35, and it'll go up to 50 in January, and all landlord-tenant cases. So that's a lot of civil, and that division right now currently handles about double what, at least double what any other division in the circuit does. So on her civil docket, she would definitely nod at what I'm doing. I spend time with her. I've watched her handle her landlord-tenant docket and her civil docket. She is very efficient. She knows what she's doing. On the criminal docket, I probably agree with Paul that she may be a little heavier-handed than I would, although I will say this. I practiced in front of Judge Kinsey in criminal court. Back when I started with the public defender's office, she was my first criminal judge that I practiced in front of. And so we had some really fun battles on some trials before I moved up to felony. But no, I think the short answer is I think she would nod along with me. Yes?
I know your time is limited when your case comes up in the docket, and this is just a personal situation, is where a decision was made, the public defender had a deal, and the thing was, for me, I knew the person's background, and it was constant. I mean, it was just constant, and the person's a Marine, but he's in his late 40s, but in all 3 counties he's done this. Do you see that? Because when this guy was cutting a deal, he was cutting a deal so that he could actually pay restitution and do community service. I was shocked because do you see that? I mean, do the judges see that this person for the last 10 years has done nothing but this constantly? Or you just listen to a public defender? Because I was shocked.
Ask me that one more time because I want to make sure I give you the right answer.
Okay, so the person has to come forward to you. Now, the public defender has already got this deal cut up, it's ready, and the person's agreed to it.
Right.
Okay, so when it's presented to you, okay, you only have a little bit of time, but the person that's coming before you has had a record for the last 10 years, not only in this county, but 12 counties, 10 years, and you can just see the whole list, same thing.
Sure.
And he gets to cut a deal. It's shocking. I mean, do you see what they just got done doing?
I have seen that, and here's what I would tell you how I would handle that. Generally speaking, I'm going to trust the parties. So if the attorneys on the opposite side of the cases are coming together and they're both saying, we know the case better than you, Judge, this is what we think is a fair resolution to the case. Generally, I'm going to go along with that. But as a criminal court judge, that's not the end of the analysis. A criminal court judge absolutely has the right, and in many cases, the absolute responsibility to reject a plea offer. So, I mean, in any particular case, under any particular set of circumstances, I can't answer that. But am I willing to turn down a plea deal just because it may be more work for me? No, I'll turn it down.
Do you get to see what they had done in the past, or you're just seeing that day?
Sometimes. It kind of depends. I mean, the most practical reality is a lot of times in county court, a lot of times this is done orally, but in circuit court where it's written down, you may see it because there may be a brand new offer that only came up that morning and the old offer is there and it's scratched out. So as a judge, you may see that yesterday the offer was 48 months in prison and today the offer is 9 months county jail. So yes, you would be able in some cases to see that, but not always. The judge, I mean, that's just, it kind of is really case specific. There's no real rule or law on that. But a lot of times the judge will be aware of the negotiations between the parties.
If I can kind of maybe elaborate on that just a little bit. I think maybe she was getting at, does the judge have latitude based on the defendant's past history of conviction?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. But not if there's a plea. So that's the catch, right? So if they enter a plea agreement, the judge basically has the option of either taking it or leaving it. Because once the plea so it's all weird because it's criminal, but the plea agreement's a contract between the defendant and the state, right? So once the judge is just approving the contract or not approving the contract, he or she can't go in there and add terms or muddle around with terms. So the plea deal is kind of the plea deal. If the defendant doesn't take a plea deal, they can plea straight to the judge. And of course, yes, again, the judge would consider that. But a judge can't say, well, here's your plea deal. You took 15, but I'm going to make it 20. You can't do it. There are some ways to kind of accomplish that as a judge, but not directly that way.
This person walked on Judge Simon. Judge Simon just accepted the deal. This person for 10 years is doing this. Pays that, for 10 years.
Right.
In all three counties. So I was shocked when we walked on it.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, without knowing more, I can't say anything about it. But yeah, I can tell you it does happen. It does. And it does. Yeah.
I am soaked.
Can we get a shot here?
And the only way that we can have conversations that allow the passion that we want is through values. What kind of values? I'll tell you. How about civility, compassion, respect, empathy? So if you enjoy the kind of music I'm playing, which combines and balances the idea of thoughtful notes, mindful execution, and passion,